So my name is John Liu. I do not live in Eastmoreland. I live in Laurelhurst. The reason I'm here is because Laurelhurst, just like Eastmoreland, is trying to become a historic district. You guys are further ahead than we are. So we're kind of looking to you as our example. You are in a bit of a contest here. And so that's the second reason I'm here, because friends help friends. So I'm going to talk about, I'm pretty focused on one thing, and you'll see it in this presentation. The slide says, only way to protect Eastmoreland. Question is, protect from what? Next slide. From that, okay? That's what I'm going to focus on in this presentation, which is demolitions. Jim has done a great job of telling you what RIP will let developers build in your neighborhood, absent a historic district protection. I'm going to talk to you about what happens first. They tear down your neighborhood. So, next slide. So these are the numbers. Almost 2,800 homes in Portland have been demolished since 2005. 384 were demolished last year alone. Now, this is a gross undercount, because for the longest time, the city of Portland had a loophole. If I was a developer, I could leave a little bit of the original house standing. I could leave a little bit of the back wall. Sometimes I could even leave part of the foundation. And I didn't have to call it a demolition. I did not need to get a demolition permit, and it did not get counted in these statistics. So in reality, there are probably several thousand Portland homes that have been demolished effectively or officially in the last several years. And you can see from the chart below, and that's City of Portland data, that the pace of demolitions is growing, very fast. Next slide. This is a map. The blue and green dots all represent demolitions in some stage or another. I think the greens are permits and the blues are completed. As you can see, it's all over Portland with a particular focus on the eastern part of Portland, southeast, northeast, and straight up east. Not too many on the west side. It seems a little unfair, but that's the way it is. Awful lot down in Selwood. Selwood, as you know, is almost unrecognizable. Surprising number in Eastmoreland. Next slide. This is an example of what I mean by a demolition that is an effective demolition, but did not even get counted on all those blue dots. This happens to be an example from Laurelhurst. I didn't have time to find photographs of the examples in Eastmoreland. The house on the left is a small bungalow. It was purchased for $390,000. It was effectively demolished and built into that thing on the right, which was sold for $900,000. The house on the left was a small house that, while not necessarily cheap, was really pretty much attainable, pretty affordable. A young family could have purchased that to start their family. A middle-class couple could have purchased that. When I am done raising kids and I'm ready to downsize, I could have purchased that. The house on the left was attainable to a wide range of people. The house on the right is really only attainable for, 1% or whatever it is. So the point is, as you convert a neighborhood from the house on the left to the house on the right, the neighborhoods becomes less diverse and more exclusionary. A lot of times people are going to attack a historic district and they're going to say historic districts are an attempt to exclude people from the neighborhood. Absolutely not true. Historic districts are an attempt to save the smaller houses that allow a neighborhood to be diverse and vibrant and welcoming to people of all types. Next slide. Another example, $610,000 is the original house. At that time, this was the second most expensive house to ever be demolished in Portland. And people said, it can't possibly happen in a neighborhood like Laurelhurst or Eastmoreland. Our houses are too expensive. Who could ever make it pencil out? Well, it sure penciled out, because they were able to build two. They sold them for over $900,000 each. They converted $600,000 into $1.9 million. Next slide. This is the latest example in Laurelhurst. House on the left, small bungalow, $360,000. Yeah, it was a fixer. My first house was a fixer. A young family could have bought that. They could have put time, love, sweat into it and made it something that, would have created, as Katie was saying, beautiful memories for their children. It turned into a 3,700 square foot, $1.2 million McMansion. The family who could have bought the house on the left, there's no way they could have bought the house on the right. When a neighborhood turns entirely into houses on the right, that neighborhood becomes very different than Eastmoreland is today, or Laurelhurst is today, or indeed that Portland is today. Next slide. So in Eastmoreland, you have had 26 flat-out official demolitions in the last several years. You've had probably double that number of loophole demolitions, these demolitions where they just left something standing, so they didn't have to call it a demolition. Because you have large lots and a lot of historical lot lines, demolitions have been very attractive here. Developers have been able to take properties, split them, build two. It always pencils out. Even, a house on 29th and Rex, the house was demolished very recently. That house was bought for $750,000. A few years ago, we would have said, that house is safe. How could it ever pencil out to buy a house for $750,000? Very profitable, actually. They'll build two on there. They'll sell them for probably 1.4 each. They'll convert that into 2.8. There's no house in Eastmoreland that is safe, but especially vulnerable are the smaller houses. So this is, I call this rip and replace development. Or in another phrase, somebody who was in the majority on the RIPSAC committee once told me, she stood up and told me, these neighborhoods are aging out. They need to be replaced. Okay. I'm aging out. I'm not ready to be replaced. So what RIP does, and what developers will do, is they're going to destroy the historical fabric of our neighborhoods. They will destroy the smaller and more affordable homes that let our neighborhoods be vibrant and diverse and welcoming to young families and to people who are not, extremely high income. And it will make our neighborhoods all the same. They're all going to look like the things on the right in some of the previous slides. Next slide. Or they might look like this, okay? Without a historic district, there is no control over what people will build in your neighborhood. They don't have to look anything like what's here. They don't have to look good. This is a house, it's about 2 blocks on the border of Laurelhurst. This is a duplex, excuse me. Each side is for sale for $1 million. That pencils out. Next slide. Very quickly, this is a duplex in North Gantabines. This is North Portland. Not necessarily what you'd think of as a very, very expensive area. Both these sides sold for over $700,000 a side, $1.4 million. These duplex things always pencil out for the developer. Jim talked, the picture on the right is a point that Jim made. Under RIP, there is a square footage limitation for what can be built, but it only applies to the main floors of the house. It does not include the basement. It does not include the attic. So nowadays, developers are building houses with basements that are half daylight, right? Half of it is above grade, and that are finished out, and they look just like rooms. They're advertised as rooms. They're counted in the square footage. And, of course, the attics are the same. They're built out with dormers. So because you have such large lots here, in a 7,000 square foot lot, on RIP they could build something that is in excess of 6,000 square feet. That is larger than virtually any house you have in your neighborhood, way larger than anything that I have in mind. So one thing that I have heard that has been said here, and I've actually saw a flyer from the anti-historic district folks that said this. It said, historic district does not stop demolitions. And it went on and on about there's one house in Irvington that was demolished. So here's the facts. This is a blow up from a portion of the city demolition map. And Ladd's Addition, the historic district, the boundaries are shown. So you can see they've been demolishing all the way up to the boundaries. They can't get past the boundary. The number of demolitions in Ladd's Addition since 2005, is 0. On the right, on your right, is the historic district of Irvington, where Jim comes from. There are some demolitions there, but look at the dates. They all come from before Irvington became a historic district in 2010. Since Irvington became protected, there has been, I believe, one, right? The Soul House, yeah. So in summary, You guys have given up your evenings. Some of you have given up many of your evenings. And every now and then when you're particularly tired, you may wonder, why am I doing this? Okay, so this is why. You're trying to protect your neighborhood from demolitions. You're trying to preserve the houses that are affordable. You're trying to send a message. Our houses are for families, not for developers. And as Jim mentioned, you're trying to, when new things are built, make sure they fit the neighborhood, that they don't look like a shoebox or a dentist's office or a warehouse, and that maybe they are made of wood instead of corrugated steel. Now, I'm going to skip over these very quickly because Jim's already talked about them. The point is that with the historic district, we will have a gradual and natural and a sensible increase in density over the years. But you'll have that increase in density without demolition. You can have density that's reasonable without demolitions. So Portland is changing. As Jim said, there's population pressures in the city and there's political pressures. There's a headlong rush to redevelop this city. There's a lot of people who think, exactly as the person I mentioned to you earlier said, that look, these neighborhoods are all aging housing stock. They need to be ripped out and redeveloped. So I am fairly sure that in 10 to 20 years, there will be very, very few neighborhoods left that look like Eastmoreland does today. One of those, I know, will be Irvington, because Irvington is protected. Another one I know will be Ladd's Addition. Ladd's Addition is protected. One of them, I hope, will be my neighborhood, Lowhurst, if we can do what you're doing. And I think it would really nice if Eastmoreland was one of those neighborhoods too. Because otherwise, yeah. Thank you.